Welcome to the living room here at the Epic Homestead. We're hanging out indoors today to do an Ask Me Anything episode that's focused more on the business side of epic gardening and epic homesteading. So I put up on my community page, much like I did with the last Ask Me Anything, just hey, ask me whatever you want about the business side of the YouTube channel. And as you'll see, there's actually much more to the business than that. So I got about 30-ish questions. I'm going to try to answer all of them. So there'll be timestamps for every single question. So if you commented, it's probably getting answered. And thank you for the comments. So I'm going to run straight down from the top. This is from Phosphor Alchemist. How do you decide on which streams of income to pursue? When the current combination seems good, what indicates a new one is worth the effort to start up? And what do you use to decide to let something go? That's a really complex and good question. So how do you decide which streams of income to pursue? I think what I need to do to answer that is also answer at the same time Rusty Shackelford's question. What are your sources of income aside from YouTube? And what percentage of your income is from content creating versus other businesses? So what I'll do is I'll answer Rusty's first, and then I'll answer Phosphor Alchemist. So first of all, the sources of income aside from YouTube. Well, most people don't know it, but Epic Gardening started off as a blog. It was actually called Xponics back in the day, and this would have been 2011 or 2010, I think, because I was only talking about hydroponics back then, and it was just a little WordPress blog where I was sharing my experiments. Now, I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to do more than just talk about hydroponics, and so I changed the name to Epic Gardening. So epicgardening.com, I always think of it as this hub and spoke model. Now, it's changed over the years, but Epic Gardening for a long time was a blog, and that was the hub of the entire business, where I would write gardening articles, try to explain things in plain English and help people out. And that brings us to a couple of the first ways that Epic Gardening started to make some money, and that would have been affiliate income, where I'm linking to Amazon or a tool or garden service provider, or just running ads on the website like you see all over the internet everywhere. Now, the thing about these models is they're good, but you're also still at the whim of something else. And so that brings us to, hey, I need to diversify, which kind of answers a little bit of Phosphor Alchemist's question of how do you decide which streams of income to pursue. The method I've always used is create one, get a stream, make sure that stream flows, right, as a stream should, without you having to always be there to pour the water in the stream and make it flow. Once you do that, you can move on and diversify your streams so that you're protected. Because let's say, I don't know, if Amazon was to change their affiliate thing. I mean, hundreds of thousands of YouTubers and content creators make money off of Amazon. And if they said, hey, we're going to change our affiliate program, then you're kind of out of luck. And so I moved over to YouTube. Now, YouTube makes money in 3 ways, not 2 ways. The first would be the YouTube ads. The second would be you can do more affiliate things on YouTube as well. And then the third would be working with brands. And so working with brands is great because it gives you a little extra protection. Let's say I want to make a video that I just know is going to hit only a subset of the audience. It's very specific, but I have a brand that wants to partner with me on that. Well, then that video becomes net profitable to make instead of a net cost, because I think a lot of people don't realize you need to film the video. You have to block off half a day, a whole day, multiple days to make the video. You either have to edit it, which takes more time yourself, or you have to pay an editor. And then there's uploading it and all that stuff. So that's a net cost of time and money. And if that video doesn't do well, or if it gets demonetized, it is nice to have brands working. Okay, so this question's gone on pretty long already. So the other streams of revenue that come in. So you have your ads, you have your YouTube ads, your ads on the website, you've got affiliate stuff that comes in, and then I had a book come out. So we'll talk about this in a second because there's another question about it, but a book, you'll make money on the advance that the publisher pays you, which is basically money they give you up front so you can either get materials or you can dedicate time to writing the book. It's almost like, it's not really a salary because technically you owe that advance money back. So until you sell enough copies to earn the amount of royalties that equals the advance. So let's say you get a $10,000 advance for writing a book, and on average you make $2 a copy sold. You need to sell 5,000 books before you even make anything more than that 10,000. So unfortunately, a lot of authors will not make anything more than the advance. Let's say their advance was $5,000. They make $2 a copy. then they need to sell 2,500 books before they make a single dollar. And unfortunately, a lot of authors don't do that. So fortunately, Field Guide to Urban Gardening has done well enough to earn past the advance. And so I do get a royalty check that comes in from that. But books certainly aren't a smashing success way to make money. Unfortunately, I wish it were the other way around. Now, other ways that I've made money from Epic Gardening, the biggest one is instead of always working with brands for YouTube, I became my own brand, right? And so if I have the platforms that I have where I'm talking about gardening and I'm really trying to spread all of that knowledge out, why would I not just source and supply the products that I recommend? And so the catch here is a lot of YouTubers, a lot of business people will want to go the cheap and easy route where they just grab some cheap product and slap their name on it. Whereas for me, I only ever want to recommend the absolute best thing I can find in any category. So the best raised bed that's made out of metal in the world is the Birdie's raised bed. And that's sort of the flagship product that I sell. And so that's another huge part of where the income for Epic Gardening comes from. I hope that answered both of your guys' questions. We're going to go into another one here. I'll probably end up touching on some of those points in later questions too. This one's from Mike Herring. I know having startup money is important, but there's some ways to start a business are there some ways to start a business with very little to no money to invest? I have a dream of running my own farming business, but with the pandemic, it's really hard to try and build any kind of savings. Okay, so I did this. When I grew and sold microgreens, this is a perfect example. So I bought a kit of growing microgreens. It was just like 5 or 6 different colorful microgreens. I started growing them. I looked at them and I said, wow, these look absolutely amazing. I wonder if a chef around San Diego would buy them. So I called my cousin up. I went and got myself a haircut. I put on nice clothes. We harvested the microgreens. I even Googled what they should taste like so I could describe them to a chef, because a chef, they care about the look and the flavor. They don't really care about like how cool it is to grow it, right? So we went down to this really nice area of San Diego where all the fancy restaurants are, and we put the microgreens on ice and we just walked around. We walked right in at about 2 or 3 p.m., which is a good time to go into a restaurant because you're not interrupting their service. And we just talked to all the chefs, and almost every single chef said no until we got to, weirdly enough, the best restaurant on the street. And they said, we actually love these. Like, these are amazing. We want 12 different types. I didn't have 12 different types at the time. My cousin was there with me. I was kind of fumbling because I was surprised they even wanted the microgreens. And he stepped in and he said, you know what? No problem. We'll have those to you in 2 weeks. And there you go. I mean, that cost me about $50 to get that off the ground. And then I was growing and supplying one of the best restaurants in San Diego for about 6 to 10 months or so. I shut that business down pretty quickly because I was traveling at the time and I just had to be in one location to do it. But that would be one great example, especially getting a farming business off the ground. All you really need to do at the start is get a couple customers, and then you start getting that income. And then you reinvest that income. Instead of having to save up from however you're making money now, get some customers, get them to pay you, maybe even get them to pay you in advance for contract growing. Then you have revenue that you can deploy towards the business. And so that's what I would say for you, Mike Herring. Sean Haynes says, where do you see yourself in the business in 10 years' time? Expansion to be able to employ people, growth into a more international market, or are you more happy to receive a good income for yourself while being able to manage it myself? So I'm in the middle of some of those right now, Sean. So right now I do have a team. So I have an assistant. I have a writing team on the blog because I just can't physically do all the writing anymore. And so we've hired some horticulturists, some master gardeners to write on the blog. So we have an editor that manages them. I have a podcast editor, a video editor, and then I have like a research assistant as well. So we have a small team. We're going to have a larger team soon, but I don't want to get to some like insane level where I'm like running this multi-global empire type of thing. For me, what's interesting is how much value can I put out to you guys who are watching these videos and engaging with the content, and how interesting and awesome can I make my individual life as well. So I want my life to be as fun and engaging and satisfying all my curiosities as possible. If that means I have to like run some grueling business to get there, I'd rather not. I'd rather do it a different way. And so I'm going to do some sort of hybrid. As far as where I see myself in the business in 10 years time, I have no idea. When I was 23, I'm 33 now, you couldn't have paid me enough money to make me believe that this is where I would be today. So I can't tell you where I'm going to be in 10 years. Okay, this is from Alexis Nieto. How can I turn an urban garden into something profitable? Any recommendations? I would say go with the advice that I gave to Mike Herring, where try to get a customer. That's what matters the most. A lot of people do it the reverse, where they think up the whole business model, they perfect everything about it, they make business cards, they make a website, all this stuff. It doesn't matter. Go get a customer, get someone to give you physical money or digital money, it doesn't really matter, and then provide them the service that they paid for, right? So if someone wants, loose leaf baby lettuce that you're growing on your urban farm, get them to buy it from you, say you'll deliver it in a month, grow it, deliver it, and then you're off to the races. That really is the recipe. Customers are the number one thing that make a business go round. This is from Rebuilt Ruins Ministries. Knowing what you know now, if you were mentoring your 18-year-old self, what are 2 things that you would encourage your younger self to do differently? These are tricky questions because it's hard to say if I did it differently, if I would now be where I am today. Maybe I would have found an opportunity and gone full bore on that, and I wouldn't even be living the life I live today, which I like the life I live today. But I get your question. And what I would say is, number 1, you don't actually have to plan out your life as much as you think you do. Because I thought, okay, I need a 3-year plan, I need a 5-year plan, how does that connect to the 10-year plan? I don't even plan past about a year these days. And my life is much more complex and at a larger scale than it was back then. And I thought I needed all these rigorous plans. Simply put, you can't predict the future. You don't know what opportunities will come your way. The best thing you can do is train your mind. So study basic general principles of how the world works, how business works, how people work. And then from there, as things come at you in life, you can make a smart decision on the fly. So that would be one of the biggest tips I would give to my 18-year-old self. All right, this is again from Rusty Shackelford. What would you do if YouTube disappeared tomorrow? That's a really good question. That would hamper me quite a bit because YouTube is at the top of the stack as far as the content that I create and the content I like to create. I mean, video is powerful. I think the cheap answer would be I would just start posting on Facebook and Instagram more, but I'm assuming you're kind of meaning what would happen if videos in general, or what would I do if there was a big blow to the business like that? I mean, I just have to evolve. I think I'd go bigger into the podcast, which I've got already. I would try to go bigger on these shorter form types of media. I would see if there's a competing host to YouTube. Maybe I'd start hosting my own videos. One thing that might make me do is really think about doing a flagship gardening course, which is something I'm working on for 2021. It would probably make me speed that up because, simply put, there's stuff that if I put it up on YouTube on either of these channels, really almost no one's going to watch, even though it's probably some of the most valuable stuff you could watch if you wanted to get better at gardening. And so what I would probably end up doing, Rusty, is I would make a flagship gardening course the number 1 priority for Epic Gardening. All right, Iva Chung says, are your homestead and all the improvements you're making to it tax deductible as business expenses? Some of them are and some of them aren't. So the simple fact is that I live in the property. If I had bought a property that I didn't live in and ran it completely for business use, then it would be 100% deductible. Based on the fact that I live here, I have to do a percentage use of home for personal and business and then fractionally deduct all of those expenses. And so some things like the shed, for example, that's 100% business use and it's a standalone free structure. That's 100% deductible. Whereas if I'm putting in the new roof or the solar system or the AC, when I'm here in my capacity as just a dude living in his house, I still enjoy that benefit. And so I can't deduct 100% of it for the business. All right, Alvin B. Do you have a wife and is she a gardener? No, I do not have a wife. And also, do ants steal pollen? It's not a business question for this AMA, Alvin, so I'm going to skip that one for now, but maybe we'll do another one soon. All right, Mark A. Holden. It seems like the market gardeners do best with microgreens. I live in an area with a lot of roadside stands, mostly Amish, but I don't know how much demand there would be for microgreens at local restaurants. How do you gauge that interest? Okay, so again, I would go back to my recipe for talking to chefs. Number 1, there's sort of a hierarchy in the kitchen, right? You have your head chef, then you have your chef du cuisine, and then you have sous chefs. What you want to find is which one of those at the restaurants you're going to go into make the buying decision. In the case of the microgreen restaurant that I was selling to, it was the sous chefs that made the buying decision. So 2 sous chefs came out and they said, we're cleared to buy these microgreens from you. And they bought 12 times 3 ounces, so 36 ounces of different microgreens. So what I would say is figure out who at the restaurant is going to make that decision. It's probably going to be the chef de cuisine, I would guess. And then you need to go in at a time where you're not going to bother them. So again, I would say 2 to 3 p.m. That's after lunch service. It's before dinner service. They're probably hanging around doing some light prep or something. You can email them beforehand. Sometimes you can just walk in, bring samples, see if they use them, and just see. I mean, the cheapest thing you can do is just walk around for an afternoon, go into restaurants, talk to chefs. You're going to learn way more than you're going to learn like thinking about it in your head. All right, Mocha Mommy. How are you building relationships with new customers since so many restaurants and catering companies are struggling these days? Well, so I think this might be a question that slightly misunderstands the business model. So I don't sell directly to restaurants. All the produce that I grow here these days, I either consume or I give away to family and friends. And pretty soon I'm going to be growing a lot of it. So I'm going to be giving it away to probably food banks. So pretty soon that's what we'll be doing. Okay, this question comes from Peep. What % of your income comes through YouTube AdSense and sponsorships, and were you affected by the adpocalypse a while ago? Honestly, the adpocalypse, for those of you who don't know, it was a time where a lot of advertisers pulled out of YouTube and your income for your ads went way down. So basically, income on YouTube is determined by how much money you make per 1,000 views of a YouTube video. Some people are up in that $20 to $30 range. It's mostly the financial guys that are up there. Some people are down in the $3 range. I'm somewhere in the middle of that. I haven't checked recently, but the adpocalypse didn't really affect me because I wasn't really that big on YouTube back then. I would say it would affect me drastically now if it happened. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. But again, gardening content is very family friendly. I keep it pretty simple. I keep it pretty relaxed here, pretty friendly. So I wouldn't be hit by, unless ads just pulled completely out of YouTube, I don't think I'd really be hit by adpocalypse. As far as the % of income that comes from YouTube AdSense and sponsorships, I would say it's somewhere around 15 to 20% of the total income, something like that. I'd have to check though. This one's from Debeeve. Do you still do hydroponics? If not, why did you stop? I still do it. I have a hydroponic system outdoors right now. It'll probably be coming up on the next homesteading vlog, so stay tuned for that. All right, I want to believe. Would you get enough chickens to sell eggs? I ask because I once had a tiny chicken business myself. If so, how much time do you give yourself to acquire chickens and learn how to raise them before moving into making money on them? I don't know if I want to do that. I have ideas of the backyard of the homestead being a fully functional market garden that pays the entire mortgage of the home at very least. So the costs of running the entire garden are paid by running the entire garden. I've thought about it. Chickens would certainly be a part of that. I don't think I'm going to start off by just going crazy on selling eggs. I'd like to understand how to properly care for healthy chickens first. I can see myself selling eggs to family and friends perhaps if they want to support, but it's not a huge thing. All right, James says, throw my hat in the ring with the income stream questions. I think I've broken that down, but if I haven't, you can always ask a follow-up. All right, Jennifer Lopez, what's your best advice for someone who loves this gardening lifestyle and dreams of making it a profitable income in the future? So there's a lot of different ways that you can make money around plants. You don't have to be a YouTuber. In fact, I would say that's probably one of the hardest ways to do it. There are way easier ways that are way more suitable for most people. So things that you can do, you could start a business that teaches people how to garden. You could start a business that builds raised beds and installs them in people's backyards and helps them plant out. And then you have a monthly fee where you come back and you actually help them care for it. That's a really successful business model that I know personally a lot of people do, and they're successful with it. So that's something that you could do. I think the question really, Jennifer, to ask yourself is, what is my personality suited for? And what business would express that personality the best? So for me, I'm a relatively introverted person. I like explaining things. I like understanding and like communicating things almost so it helps me make sense of it. And hopefully it makes you guys understand it a little bit better too. I like making content. I like experimenting. I like to have my hand in a lot of different pies. And so that's why I've created the business that I've created. So there's a lot of different ways you could do it. I mean, you could become an arborist. It depends. Do you like physically working in the garden? There's a bunch of jobs and careers that do that. It doesn't have to be your own business. You could get employed by someone to do that. And so there's a lot of different ways. You could become a farmer. You could become a consultant. You could become a garden designer, installer. I even know someone who does houseplant consultations. Now, I'm not sure how stable that business model is in the long run, but it's certainly a way to make some side income. Okay, James, now that you have more space, do you think you'll get into market gardening or form relationships with local restaurants and start selling to them? Yeah, I actually do think, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think I will do it. And the reason why is, number one, I want my money to always be where my mouth is. If I'm talking about how to grow plants, and certainly if I'm ever talking about how to sell plants, I better be selling them myself, or else you guys shouldn't trust what I have to say on the topic. And so given that I've done it before, I have some credibility, I feel, to talk about it. But what I'd like to do is I would like to sell and partner to the local restaurants around my new house. I've got a couple new relationships with people building food halls and building restaurants, and I think we could do some really cool stuff. So again, I think maybe the backyard will be a small but functional market garden. I'm hoping it would make somewhere around $3,000 to $5,000 a month. That would probably cover most of the expenses. Actually, it would cover all the expenses that go into this house. And so that'd be really cool. Okay. Let's see. This is from Mike Nealon. If you needed to hone your gardening skills to only one or two families of plants to nurture and sell, which would you choose? So this is very classic market gardener. You would choose the highest value, most perishable things. So I would say leafy greens, salad greens, baby greens, microgreens, or baby root vegetables, as far as I know, are the most prized, highest margin, quickest growing crops. Those are the ones that you should focus on. This one's from Nathaniel Arch, who says, how did you build your website? Very simple. I just use WordPress. 2, how do you convince Birdie's Garden Buds to supply? We've been partners for a long time. I've used their beds for a really long time. And I said, hey, do you guys want a trusted distributor out here in America? And they said yes. And so that's how that happened. 3, do you ever want to start a nursery? I've thought about it. So I want a greenhouse where the old shed is right now. There'll be a chicken coop behind that, and there'll also be some sort of greenhouse glass house. I've thought about doing some propagations of tropical plants and selling those. Who knows? We'll see. It certainly would be interesting. All right, this next question is from Mathis Lodolphe. Sorry if I mispronounced that, my friend. So how profitable was it for you to write and release a book, and would you consider writing another book? I would say of all of the things I do, writing a book is actually the least profitable thing that I do. So when and I'm not complaining at all. When I wrote Field Guide to Urban Gardening, here's what a book does for you if you're someone who needs to get the word out about your knowledge. It puts you on the map. Books are still held in high regard. If someone says they have a book out, psychologically you think, oh wow, like interesting. You know what I mean? Your eyes perk up and you say, oh, I need to kind of think about what they're saying a little bit more. I need to respect their opinion a little bit more. Is that right or is that wrong? That's a debate for another time. But how profitable was it for me? Let me just do a quick thought experiment here. Let's say for you, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to pay you $5,000 to write a book and I'll give you $2 a copy, right? Okay, well, that's your advance. You don't ever have to pay that back, but you have to what we call earn it out. You have to earn out that advance. So until you sell 2,500 copies, I'm not giving you a single dime, right? Now, let's say you sell 10,000 copies. So your royalties are $20,000. So great, you made $20,000. No, you made $15,000 for selling 10,000 copies of a book. So you make about $1.50 after the advance is paid off. So you can see how, $15,000, it's nothing to sneeze at. That's a good chunk of money. But if that's all you did, that's not enough money to live off of. And that's assuming you sell 10,000 copies of a book, which most authors don't even sell 500 copies of a book. And that's just the truth. And so you start to see how a book, it's not about making money from the book. It's about what that book does for your overall business. That really is what matters. All righty. Kay Patterson. How do you plan and schedule your work and hold yourself accountable? So I used to have a problem with procrastination and laziness. I don't really have a problem with that anymore. And I've tracked that to how excited I am about like living my life and running the business. I'm excited about everything I'm doing. So I'm not going to put it off because I like to do it and I want to do it. So that's not a problem for me anymore. But planning and scheduling can be a problem. And so the way I think about it is, if I only had to get 1, 2, 3 things done today, what would those things be? And the way you choose that, at least in my opinion, is you choose the things that if you did those things, everything else you did became easier. So let me give you an example. I could, for example, edit 5 videos today, or I could find a video editor. Which one's more valuable? If I find the video editor, I don't edit the videos and I'm 5 videos behind. But if I edit the 5 videos, I always have to edit the videos from then on out. So if I found an editor today, it would actually save me way more work down the road. So every single day, what I'm trying to do is do work that saves me work in the future, not necessarily do the work that's the most urgent in the moment. Of course, sometimes you have those days, but that really is how I plan. I don't sit there and write every single thing I'm doing at every single hour. Personally, I don't really think that's the best way to plan. I just think, what's the actual most important thing to do at any given time? And then I just really try to do that thing. Bella Torresani. How do you budget? Do you follow a formula, or is it when your paycheck comes in and you just spend whatever you need at the time and then save it? Also, how do you break down your business expenses, like to make sure you're bringing in more than you're spending, especially when you're making bigger investments like the new shed? Okay, so personal budget, I really don't I really don't spend that much money at all. My money goes to the mortgage of this house, which fortunately isn't actually that much because I just bought a good priced home. And then the rest is just like utilities and food. I barely even spend money on clothes or anything. So my personal budget, I just spend what I spend and I don't really track it. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I just don't feel that I spend enough to really justify getting granular about it. Now the business is another thing. Yes, I have QuickBooks. I use QuickBooks for my accounting. And what I do there is I say every week, okay, where am I at? What's come in? What's going out? Fortunately, I'm very frugal as far as the business goes too. And I'm much more aggressive with the money that I'm spending in the business. I spend way more in the business than I spend in the personal. In fact, by a factor of probably 100, but it's still, I'm taking in more than I'm spending. And I'm just making sure that, again, everything I spend money on in the business should set me up for future success in the business. It really shouldn't be a wasted expense. And so I'll run through and I'll comb and I was like, do I need that software anymore? Or like, am I spending too much money on a type of content that's not doing well? You guys don't like it, right? So that's kind of how I do it. Everything in my world, if it's an expense or even if it's an income stream, I want it to kind of play twice. So for example, the shed is a good example. The shed, straight up deduction off of your taxes, so that helps you. But the shed is a great way to speed up my work in the garden. It's gonna make me way more efficient, right? But also what the shed does is that's like a new almost character in the show. You guys like the shed. I love the shed. When I go out there, we do some videos out there. It's kind of like a set. It's a theme, you know? And I think that helps the experience of the videos and it helps the experience of the garden. So it kind of plays twice. Okay, Britt Mai. Did or how did you apply for grants and subsidies? I've never done that, so I don't have a answer on that one. So that's it, guys. That is all the questions. I really hope this wasn't boring and I hope it was informative. If you don't want me to do videos like this in the future, I will know because the video won't get a lot of views and I won't do it again. But if we want to have a separate little series here on Epic Homesteading about homesteading business or the business side of epic gardening, then I would love to do it. I'm clearly very passionate about it and I hope you guys enjoyed. So until next time, good luck in the garden and keep on growing.